Let's talk about Minato, because we have a new one-shot about him that came out, and it's pretty great, with a lot of interesting stuff there. So let's take a look at that one-shot and talk about why Minato is the greatest to ever do it, and why Hashirama might be a fraudulent individual. Now, if you want to skip right to the part where I talk about the one-shot and the stuff Minato did there, feel free to go right to that section. I'll even put the timestamp on the screen, but I do feel like the stuff Minato does requires some setup to really get across how crazy it is. So let's get into it. By the end of Shippuden, everyone kind of accepted that Hashirama was just one of the strongest characters in the whole series and by far the strongest Hokage, except Naruto of course. But it wasn't always like that. Early on, Minato was definitely built up as the peak of what a ninja can become. I mean, he was the guy that defeated the Nine Tails. We didn't have any context at the time, and as far as the story was concerned back then, the Nine-Tailed Fox was the absolute force of power in the series. When Orochimaru was using Edo Tensei to revive the past Hokage, the only one that Hiruzen absolutely didn't want to fight was Minato. The idea of fighting Hashirama and Tobirama weren't even nearly as scary to him. You also have Jiraiya and Tsunade basically thinking of him as the peak of the verse. As far as they understood, he was the best of the best. This attitude even continues into early Shippuden. Naruto's goal is obviously to become Hokage, and despite Hashirama later being treated as the peak of Hokage, the story treats Minato like Naruto's end goal, the guy that he is supposed to surpass and overcome. For a lot of the story, it feels pretty obvious that Minato was supposed to be the strongest guy around. It is just a bunch of statements, but for the longest time, we're just not given any reason to doubt them. And then everything changed when the Hokage came back from the dead. Hashirama is getting called the god of shinobi. Everyone takes this dude's cells like they're steroids. He sees Naruto power up the Shinobi Alliance and says, wow, he's almost built like I am. And at the end of the day, he beat Madara, the guy who was just the main problem of the story, while Madara was controlling the full power Nine Tails. It's like Kishimoto was trying to have him directly one-up Minato's rep. Eventually, the story of Naruto just sort of propped up Hashirama as the absolute peak, aside from Ten Tails' powers coming into play. That obviously brought things up to the next level. But aside from that, the narrative kinda just knocked Minato off his pedestal and put Hashirama there instead. It's a strange retcon for sure that probably happened to make the story work, since it slowly gives him and Madara so much relevance. And for a while, that's just what the community accepted. There were debates and discussions here and there about whether or not Hashirama was truly the strongest Hokage before Naruto, but most people took the narrative implication for what it was, and I did too. That is, until recently. In case you somehow haven't heard, the story of Naruto pulled its own Edo Tensei and briefly came back from the dead. Just a nice little one-shot about Minato, his relationship with Kushina, and how he developed the famous Rasengan. Just a fun story that got me really nostalgic. But when I peeled back those sepia-tinted glasses and paid attention to the story, I kinda noticed something. Minato is really strong, just straight up ridiculous in this chapter, so I really want to examine this. The one-shot starts with Minato facing off against the 4 and 5 Tails as they charge Biju bombs to shoot at him and his squad, and he says, so this is a Biju's power, as if this is the first time he's ever seen this. And maybe there's some time skip that isn't very well communicated, but as far as I can tell, Minato invented the Rasengan, the move he based on the Biju bomb, an A-rank jutsu, the same day he first saw a Biju bomb. To call Minato a prodigy is an understatement. Now, it is important to understand that in Naruto, Jiraiya does state it took 3 years for Minato to fully develop the Rasengan, so maybe I'm wrong and there was a time skip here, totally possible. Except for the fact this day here is the first time that Kushina heard of Minato developing it. Even if Kushina is locked away, I find it really hard to believe that she never heard of him developing some new jutsu in a 3-year span, especially when he went out of his way to tell her in the one-shot. Now, Minato does say that the jutsu he's working on is still unfinished, as if he has been developing it, so maybe there is a bit of a time skip between then and the first pages, but the time frame can't be that long. So we have two possible interpretations here. Number one is that this Rasengan that Minato develops is incomplete. It is not a perfected Rasengan as as we see when he's Hokage, which is, by the way, actually insane if that's the case, but I'll get into that later. Option 2 is that this is just a straight up retcon and that the 3 years thing is a total lie. Regardless, this is a really impressive feat, although I guess there is the third option that 3 years did pass and Kushina just didn't know until now. But again, I find that unlikely. Either way, all of that is just skill and doesn't really get across how ridiculous Minato actually is. Because later in the one-shot, Kushina starts getting overtaken by Kurama, and he almost immediately starts reinforcing her seal, with Kurama straight up comparing it to the sealing power of Hashirama. And then he somehow links his chakra into Kushina, similar to how Killer Bee and Kushina helped in Naruto's fight against Kurama, and straight up clashes with him. He took his Rasengan and clashed with a Biju bomb like that was just the natural thing to do. Granted, Kushina was restraining Kurama somewhat with her sealing chains, and this may have somewhat weakened him. But it can't have been that much since he has been shown actively resisting this jutsu, both in his fight with Naruto and in this very chapter. And none of this is to mention that this clash does not represent Minato at his best. This is before he became Hokage, and he definitely trained to get even stronger in that time. This isn't even mentioning Sage Mode that gives a huge amp to the power of his jutsu. I don't care what Minato says, he's a perfect sage too. And again, there is still the possibility that this isn't even a perfected version of the Rasengan. That part is just speculation, but either way, this moment is crazy for Minato. And yeah, Hashirama is strong too, considering he did straight up beat Madara and Kurama. And yeah, as impressive as Minato's sealing abilities are, the statement we get in the one-shot is comparing him to Hashirama, making Hashirama the standard. The difference, though, is that Hashirama was running around with Wood Release, the anti-Biju element. Hashirama ain't weak, but he was also dealing with Biju with a type advantage under his belt. Minato was compared to that through his sheer skill and power. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that Minato in his prime dog walks Hashirama like it's any other day. I'm just saying it might be more of a debate now depending on how you interpret some things. All I'm saying is that maybe the fraud of Shinobi over here just isn't as good as he's cracked up to be. Maybe he should take a step back and just see how a real ninja gets it done out here. So let me know what you think. Do you think this one-shot has retconned Minato into being the strongest Hokage aside from Naruto? Or do you think Hashirama still reigns as the top dog? Let me know in the comments. A lot of this is speculation and reading into things, so there's room for debate. And if you liked the video, do be sure to like and subscribe. If you really liked the video and want to support the channel, you can also become a member. But in the meantime, take care and have a good one.